Hello and welcome to Insight. I am Elizabeth Omori. MPOX, also known as monkeypox, is an infectious viral disease that can occur in humans and other animals. Symptoms include a rash that forms blisters and then crosses over fever and swollen lymph nodes. The time from exposure to the onset of symptoms range from 3 to 17 days, and symptoms typically last from 2 to 4 weeks. However, medical experts say cases may be severe, especially in children, pregnant women, or people with suppressed immune system. A new outbreak of a different variant of MPOX began in 2023 and was declared a public health emergency of international concern in August. This is Surveillance in Nigeria. A case of monkeypox is part of our discussion on the program today. Now, entrepreneurship plays a significant role in nation building through job creation and innovative ideas that can be harnessed to stimulate economic growth, and by so doing they contribute to the GDP and national prosperity. Economists say when entrepreneurs are supported, they unlock their potentials. There are also challenges militating their growth. We will assess challenges of entrepreneurial development and positive tricks for entrepreneurs to keep them in business. So, let's begin.
I'm fascinated with the discourse on national monuments and assets and how much is being done to preserve and
look into the language issue. We have turned English to become like a pride value in our own cultural values.
It's not cash transfer. It's not a COVID-19.
Invasion 1897 was a deliberate
many of these people coming to the urban areas now.
These and applications, there are terms and conditions that
of course it is the union of two people, a man and a woman coming together.
My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. In May 2022, the World Health Organization made an emergency announcement of the existence of a multi-country outbreak of MPOX. The initial cluster of cases was found in the United Kingdom, where the first case was detected in London on the 6th of May 2022 in a patient with a travel history from Nigeria. The surge in cases of MPOX is becoming worrisome because it is a part of our responsibility to educate. We will be enlightening you on this viral disease on this segment. My guest, Professor Dimi Ogonia, Chairman, World Health Organization Emergency Committee on MPOX Surge 2024, will deal on the issue, and it joins us via Zoom. Professor Ogonia, thank you so much for joining us on Insights.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. Now, Prof, I need you to educate us on this viral disease and its symptoms.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're talking about MPOX, that was previously referred to as monkeypox. It was recently declared a public health emergency of international concern by the WHO, that's the World Health Organization, and a public health emergency of intercontinental security by the African CDC. So MPOX, otherwise called monkeypox, has been with us since 1958. That was the first time it was discovered in captive monkeys. But the first human case was reported in 1970. So since 1970, it has been causing outbreaks and endemic infections, mainly in some rural settlements in Central Africa and in West Africa. Nigeria reported three cases between 1972 and 1978. And Nigeria was free of any case until 2017, where we had an outbreak, which was the largest outbreak of grade 2 at that time, that affected more than 110 countries across the globe, circulating through community transmission outside Africa. So at that time, as you said in your introductory remarks, a global emergency was declared by the WHO. Cases declined after that global emergency. But beginning in 2023, we are witnessing a resurgence of MPOX, especially in the Central African countries, specifically in the DRC. And it is also spreading to other countries that never reported MPOX in the past, including Rwanda, Kenya, Burundi, and Uganda. On account of this, the WHO has declared this MPOX outbreak a public health emergency requiring proactive actions by everyone.
Okay, you tell us, who is at risk?
Yeah, so MPOX is classically a zoonotic disease. What it means is that traditionally it is transmitted from animals. So anybody that is exposed to the virus could be at risk. There are three major modes of transmission or means of transmission of MPOX. It's animal to human, human to human, and environment to human. Animal to human means that if you get in contact with animals that are infected through their secretions or by handling the animals, hunting for the animals, or you cook undercooked, consume undercooked bushmeat, there's a chance that you could get infected. Most of these animals are actually forested animals. Means that animals found in the forest, usually squirrels and some other rodents. Second mode of transmission is human to human. So if you are in close contact with somebody that has MPOX, usually it's close physical contact, usually skin to skin contact. Sometimes it is established that it could be transmitted via droplet infection, airborne droplet infection. That means if you are in close proximity with somebody that has MPOX, you are likely to get infected. The other human-to-human transmission is via sexual transmission. There's established sexual transmission of MPOX reported in Nigeria and outside Nigeria, and even the current upsurge reported in Central Africa. There is a component of sexual transmission. So you can get infected if you touch the contaminated environment of a person with MPOX. So especially healthcare workers and those that care for people that have MPOX. If you touch the contaminated environment and it gets to your mucous membrane, you can equally get infected. So everybody should be at risk depending on your exposure. But there are some group of persons that are at risk of severe disease, and this includes children, pregnant women, people that have advanced HIV infection or other causes of immunosuppression. So people that are immunosuppressed have been shown to have more severe disease, more severe morbidity, hospitalization, and deaths. In fact, one would argue that, especially if you look at the global outbreak, close to 95% of the persons that have died are people that have advanced HIV infection. In Central Africa, such as DRC, most of the people that are dying there are actually children, and there are few reports of deaths from pregnant women. HIV, advanced HIV, is a risk factor for severe disease and deaths. And that has been reported both in Nigeria, outside Nigeria, and globally. There are other causes of immunosuppression. One needs to be alert. The clinicians, healthcare workers managing cases must be alert to other causes of immunosuppression, such as these patients will require very detailed supportive care.
What about cancer patients? Are they at risk as well?
Yeah, so cancer patients could be at risk of having severe disease because, especially when they are receiving chemotherapy or radiotherapy. In that circumstance, they are immunocompromised. So whatever will cause anybody to be immunocompromised, whether end-stage kidney disease, end-stage liver disease, treatment for cancer or cancer itself, anything that can make anybody to be immunocompromised is a risk factor for severe MPOX and ultimately death.
All right, Prof, I need you to educate us. How is this different from COVID-19? Could you spell out the symptoms for us?
Yeah, MPOX is completely different from COVID-19.
Okay.
MPOX is described as a febrile illness, usually of zoonotic origin. Of course, now we are seeing human-to-human transmission of MPOX. Whereas COVID-19 is primarily a respiratory syndrome virus, coronavirus type 2, whereas MPOX is caused by what we call monkeypox. The similarities between is that COVID-19 can also present with sore throats. MPOX can also present with sore throats. Usually, COVID-19, it is rare to see skin rash in COVID-19, but it is typical to see skin rash in MPOX. And except a patient has complication, it's not usual to see pneumonia, cough, pneumonia, breathlessness in MPOX. But usually it is usual to see some of this cough, respiratory infection in people that have COVID-19. We have no evidence now that pox is airborne. A number of studies have been done, but there's evidence to suggest that COVID-19 is airborne. So COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 spreads more efficiently than mpox. So what it means is that there was a chance that we'll have more cases of COVID-19 than we will have for mpox. So those are the major differences between the two diseases.
Okay, so how deadly is MPOX?
The illness can be mild, and in most situations, they respond even without significant medical. The mortality rates from MPOX has ranged from 0.4% to 10%. And that's why the world is a bit worried about this new clade that is circulating now, because it's present morbidity and mortality. But generally speaking, the people that have a severe disease that may result in death are people that present late to the hospital, are not well managed, people that have concurrent infections such as chickenpox and mpox or other endemic infections in the African setting, including measles and malaria, and of course pregnant women, and then also children, as has been observed in the Democratic Republic of Congo. But overall, mpox is not a deadly disease, but if it is neglected, in people that have advanced HIV, in pregnant women, it could cause fatality. Yeah, so mpox is largely a self-limiting mild illness. So what that means is that majority of people that are infected will have a mild illness, and they're likely to recover. But there are certain factors that will determine whether it will lead to a fatality. So, for instance, delay in the management of mpox lesions may lead to complications, and persons may die from that. People that have advanced HIV, because their immune system is suppressed, they may present with severe manifestation, and indeed that may result in death. In Nigeria, for instance, a significant number of the persons that have died are people that have advanced HIV, including outside Nigeria. Children are also prone to having severe disease that may lead to death because of poor care and the associated concurrent infections, such as varicella zoster infection, which is otherwise called chickenpox, measles infections, and other infections that are endemic in most parts of Africa, especially in the DRC. Pregnant women have also been shown to be at risk of mortality if they are not cared for properly. And people with other sorts of immunocompromised states, people on chemotherapy, radiotherapy that have a suppressed immunity are more likely to die from mpox. But overall, mpox is not a deadly disease. It usually presents with mild symptoms. But if people do not pay attention to care and treatment, especially in children, people with advanced HIV disease, people that are immunosuppressed, it may progress to severe disease that may lead to death.
Okay, so what is the treatment like? Is vaccination the only way out, or avoiding physical contact?
So it's important that as much as possible we prevent the spread of this virus, especially as we have a new clade that is called the clade 1B that appears to be more transmissible and more severe than the clade 2 that caused the global outbreak and also is responsible for cases in Nigeria, because Nigeria we have the clade 2. We are yet to report any clade 1B. So it is important that we are vigilant to ensure that this disease does not spread, especially to the vulnerable population that I've highlighted earlier on. In the management of this case is mainly supportive. For now, we don't have, to the best of my knowledge, we don't have therapeutics in Nigeria. We are waiting for vaccines to arrive in Nigeria. So mpox is a condition that is treated largely by supportive care. And what that means is that we give drugs and offer care to address some of the major symptoms and signs that the patients present with. But I also want to emphasize that it's now that we have a new clade, which is called clade 1B, which is responsible for the current upsurge. This clade is notorious for having to be more transmissible and to cause more severe disease that may lead to death. So essentially how we care for patients is also care for their skin rashes. And if they develop complications, we also treat those complications. I'm not aware that we have any therapeutics, MPOX specific therapeutics in Nigeria. And vaccinations we have donations of vaccinations, and I believe we are still expecting the vaccines in our country. And the National Primary Health Care Development Agency is working around with stakeholders to see how they can identify vulnerable groups that will be vaccinated. So that is the outlook of MPOX management and treatment.
Okay. You know, Prof, diseases will definitely break, but building strong response mechanism will go a long way in preventing outbreaks. How do we strengthen our disease surveillance?
I think it's very, very important to emphasize that this is a phase that we need to strengthen surveillance system, especially for MPOX, such that it is more proactive and we're able to identify cases. I've always said that I believe that in most parts of Africa, the number of cases of MPOX, as it may apply to other diseases, is underreported. And we have a gross underestimation of the number of cases of MPOX that we have because of challenges in our surveillance system and the fact that perhaps our surveillance system is not very sensitive for MPOX, especially what I call the new MPOX, because what we have now is a new MPOX. It's not the classical MPOX. And what that means is that the symptoms may be varied, and the clinicians and the public health system requires high index of suspicion to identify cases of MPOX. And because it can present with very mild disease, most people will not come to the hospital or formal setting for diagnosis. So we may have a number of cases out there that have mild illness that don't know they have MPOX. And some people may think they have a sexually transmitted disease, whereas they have MPOX. So it is important that we focus on our surveillance system to detect more cases, and I believe that is what the Nigerian Center of Disease Control is doing, following this public health emergency. Because if we don't do that, we are largely walking blindly. If we don't have an idea of the total number of cases and the burden of cases we have, and how MPOX is transmitted in our country and in other African countries, it may be difficult and practically impossible for us to devise strategies to address this problem. So surveillance is very important. Investment in research and development to uncover the natural history, the transmission dynamics and risk factors for MPOX in Nigeria and elsewhere is also very important. Elsewhere, I mean in Africa. Then also ensure that as we are getting these vaccines, we are able to conduct further research to understand how these vaccines work in Africa, in Nigeria, because the evidence we have so far is evidence based on what was done in Europe and America and not in the African setting. So we have a lot of work to do to understand the MPOX outbreak very well, and I believe it requires the cooperation of everybody, the citizen, the government, and all stakeholders to address this problem.
Okay. You are the chairman, World Health Organization Emergency Committee on MPOX Surge 2024, and also the president of Nigerian Infectious Disease Society. Now, these are portfolios you are actually holding to strengthen surveillance. What role should the primary health care centers be playing in this regard at the grassroots to ensure that cases surging are reduced to the barest?
Yeah, thank you very much. Primary care has always been a challenge in our country, and that's the first point of care where they receive the basic form of health care that is supposed to be preventive mainly and can be curative too. And primary health care, what we call the best preventive strategy that we have ever had, which is vaccination. Individual in Nigeria and elsewhere is closer to a primary health care center than a secondary health center or tertiary health center. To that extent, the primary health care centers are very, very important. And I know there's an effort to strengthen the primary health care centers both by federal and state governments, and we want to call on them to do more to ensure that that is achieved, and that our primary health care centers are more responsive to the health needs of the population. Primary health care centers are important, especially for this MPOX outbreak, because they may be the first point of call for anybody that has suspected rashes or fever, and advise such clients that may be suspected cases of MPOX to appropriate referral centers. And indeed, some of them are doing this. They get to connect with the State Ministry of Health and the Nigerian Center for Disease Control when they have a suspected case, in addressing problems of surveillance and addressing challenges related to outbreaks and public health threats.
Okay, Prof, why is addressing issues of surveillance an issue when it comes to disease outbreaks?
Yeah, so there are many challenges related to surveillance when it comes to outbreaks. Unfortunately, I say this, sometimes surveillance processes are more reactive than proactive. And what I mean by that is that we tend to be more active, more forceful, and more efficient when we have an existing outbreak. So it seems that the outbreak enables us to do better. But when there's no outbreak, we are not sort of compelled to do much. And they are challenging because, of course, Nigeria runs a federal system, and as such, responsibility for surveillance and healthcare doesn't lie with the federal government alone, also lies with the state governments and local governments. And there's so much, for instance, an organization such as the Nigerian Center of Disease Control can do without the support of the state governments and the local governments. And we have had situations, for instance, in COVID-19 and perhaps in monkeypox, where some state governments and some local governments and some ministries of health may not be doing as much as they should do to ensure that there's sufficient surveillance to identify cases and isolate cases, trace contacts, and manage such contacts. And so I believe political will, availability of resources for surveillance efforts, lack of competent manpower, because ultimately surveillance for some special disease requires competent manpower. And this competent manpower may not be available across Nigeria. There are several situations where the Nigerian Center of Disease Control has deployed manpower from Abuja to some states because they do not have competent manpower. And that results in delay in detecting cases. So these are some of the challenges that are affecting surveillance in our setting. And I believe that we will need to be very proactive to identify the contextual challenges for each of our federal and state regions and local government regions and address them collectively.
Okay. Now, Prof, my final question is this on the issue before us. What role or roles is diet and alternative medicine playing in treatment?
What I would say is that diet is very important, because diet is important to maintain and sustain your immune system. So if you do not have the right diet and the right quality and right quantity, you will be deficient in several nutrients. And then it means that you have a suppressed immunity. And that puts you at risk of having MPOX. Secondly, what we have observed personally from caring from patients with MPOX is that ensuring that they have their regular meals and they do not go into starvation or hunger will improve the recovery. So those that are able to eat their regular meals have a tendency of recovering faster than those that are not having meals available. And I think the practical example is in the DRC, where the challenge of starvation, poverty, and the likes is compounding the problem in DRC and resulting in severe disease. Alternate medical practice and herbal medicines, I do not have any evidence of their role, and I've always advised that we need to be cautious about how we use any alternate medicine or herbal medicine without having the advice from the proper authorities or healthcare workers. They have a role.
Professor Dimi Ogaina, Chairman, World Health Organization Emergency Committee on MPOX Surge 2024. We want to thank you so much for enlightening us, and we do appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
I'm fascinated with the discourse on national monuments and assets and how much is being done to preserve and
look into the language issue. We have turned English to become like a pride value in our own cultural values.
It's not cash transfer. It's not a COVID-19.
Invasion 1897 was a deliberate
many of these people coming to the urban areas now.
These and applications, there are terms and conditions that
of course it is the union of two people, a man and a woman coming together.
My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. Entrepreneurship is the creation of economic value in ways that generally entail beyond the minimal amount of risk and potentially involving values. Besides simply economic ones, entrepreneurs face multiple risks such as bankruptcy, financial, competitive, environmental, reputational, political, and economic risks. To thrive, entrepreneurs, economists believe, must plan of budgeting and show investors that they're considering risks by creating a realistic business plan. What is the business space like for Nigerian entrepreneurs? What are their challenges and how can they contribute effectively to national development? My guest, George Korede Martins, development expert and founder, Enterprise Development Institute, also known as EDI, will speak to us. Thank you so much for joining us on Insights.
It's a pleasure. Good to be here.
Thank you so much. Now let's hear from you. What is your take on our entrepreneurial space in Nigeria?
Well, as a background, let's just look at entrepreneurship in itself, which has to do with discovery, evaluation, and productive operationalization of every opportunity that you have positively. In Nigeria, as the case may be, entrepreneurship needs to be developed more. But before we come into the modern day entrepreneurship, it's always good to look at our history, the background of how entrepreneurship started in itself. I have two analogies. One, divine. Secondly, history of entrepreneurship. The Almighty saw that the entire universe was without form and void, and darkness was upon the surface of the deep. He allowed his spirit to move, and then he said, "Let there be light," and light came. He spoke creation into existence. He gave himself, a part of himself, his spirit, to go forth, to bring forth light, and every darkness disappeared. Creation became a reality, and we are worshiping him, be you a Muslim or Christian today. That is a gain in itself. You give something and you get in return. Now, concerning history about entrepreneurship, which is how trade came into being, our forefathers will keep probably cassava somewhere along the village road. They expect that when you're passing, if you need cassava, you drop orange. Trade by barter. Before money, means of exchange, came into being. So these are the histories of entrepreneurship in humanity.
So, would you say, because you are an expert in development matters, are entrepreneurs really playing their roles effectively, from your explanation?
Entrepreneurs, beg your pardon, entrepreneurs are actually doing what they can, what we can, in this space, in the business space in Nigeria. And you cannot take away entrepreneurship from development. But there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed accordingly. The government of Nigeria has put together policies and agencies, commissions, to ensure that entrepreneurship is harnessed and MSMEs are supported. That is, micro, small, medium enterprises are supported. We have SMEDAN, we have NDE, we have Bank of Industry doing a lot to assist entrepreneurs. But it is not enough. All these have to be on two pivotal stands before any policy of government can actually succeed. And as we go on in this discourse, I will explain those two pivotal stands that every development that will be sustainable need to rest for us to achieve this, especially in the space of entrepreneurship.
Okay. As an expert in this area, what are the challenges entrepreneurs face?
Before the importance and the need of money, we have to look at what's available in country. The responsibility of government. One, entrepreneurship in itself simply means business. And there's no way you can establish a business if there's no power, electricity supply. We have abundance of dams in this country. We have opportunities that need to be developed in the area of the power industry. We also have opportunity in renewable energy, I beg your pardon. In northern Nigeria, from the northwest to northeast, you have deserts where windmills can thrive, where you can have renewable solar energy farm along the line. We're not forgetting that we have insecurity challenge, but with the two pivotal stand that I'm going to suggest, I think all these things, we need to, we'll have solution to all this. Besides power, which the economy of any country rests, education is key. You can't just establish a business without you having the knowledge to maintain that business and make it to be productive at the end of the day. So that is very important, that as we see. Solving the problems, making sure the challenges becomes a thing of the past, we just have to go cap in hand again to those who are governing us, those who are saddled with the responsibility to ensure that Nigeria works and keep developing. One, we spoke about the issue of electricity, which is very important. The Federal Ministry of Power needs to rise to the occasion, ensuring that our power industry really stands their ground to ensure that renewable energy is available in country, all over Nigeria, to ensure that the existing dams, be it Geregu dams, whatever they may be, that all those dams are actually being renewed from time to time. They direct the dams, they increase the output of power distribution, and ensure that all these things are actually taken care of, because power is key to rolling the wheels of businesses in Nigeria. In terms of money that are needed, yes, people come and say, oh, I need credit to be able to do my business.
These plans, these sustainable plans, would they be short-term or long-term? What should they be looking forward to? Like for a prospective entrepreneur willing to come on board?
Well,
should such plans be either on a short term for he or she to grow, or a long term, depending on the type of business the person is interested in doing?
The entrepreneurship, which is the discovery of whatever idea opportunities that you have, you ruminate over it, and then you operationalize it with time. Before we go into the business of entrepreneurship, as a nation, Nigeria, there are two pivotal stands that the country needs to stand on before we can achieve all these, plans that one has. And I've said we need to orientate and reorientate our minds on two factors, 2 points, which is just integrity on the one side and patriotism on the other. Integrity just means doing the right thing, saying the right thing at all times, not given to corruption, not given to impunity, while patriotism simply implies love for the nation, putting our country, Nigeria, as first. When you love Nigeria, you will not do anything that is untoward against her and her people. When we have these two, integrity and patriotism in place, then government agencies and the handlers of government policies will be able to do things aright. Idea of impunity will be out of it. We'll be selfless instead of being selfish. We'll see budgeted money as not being our personal private money. My money don't come. Then we'll be out of it. Then we will actually make use of those approved money budgeted for to actually take care of those items, those things that the government has aligned them to actually achieve. Those who seek for credit will actually get the credits, and you will not be considering my person in church and mosque as the ones that ought to get this money. You'll not be considering my tribal brother or sister as the one that ought to get the money. But all this credit will come simply on credit. And then when you do this, we'll come together as a people and say, let us monitor how these funds are being spent. And when you, on the part of those that are beneficiaries of entrepreneurial funds in Nigeria, we'll also have integrity imbibed in us. We'll run our businesses accordingly. People are getting money, and some of them are using money meant for businesses to marry probably second or third wife, which is untowards. They're using such monies to build extra houses, using such monies to buy cars for affluence, which is a way inimical to the essence of what the monies are meant for. When you're given credit to put into your business, if you are imbibed with integrity, doing the right thing, saying the right thing, you actually do same. If you are imbibed in patriotism, love for the nation, knowing fully well that entrepreneurship will eventually develop SMEs, small, medium-scale enterprises in Nigeria, and gradually and surely, Nigeria as a country will develop economically. In 1994, I was in Germany. I was in Holland and Belgium. And Germany in particular, they develop based on entrepreneurship, development of MSMEs. In their background, each house has what is called a keller, that is background in the ground floor. They will go there. Each family, the government encourages each family to manufacture one thing or the other. When they do, with time, they give support to them because they are responsible to actually making use of that money. You will find out that they grow from micro to small, from small to medium. And small, medium enterprises have the capacity to eventually become industries.
Yes.
And that is how development came to Germany economically. Best economy in Europe. Same for China today.
You talked about key values, national values, integrity and patriotism. And these are values every entrepreneur out there should embrace if they actually want to thrive in the business space. Now, of the hundreds of thousands of business ventures that entrepreneurs launch every year, many never get off the ground. Sometimes others fizzle after they start. How do we deal with fear and doubt?
What is worth doing at all is worth doing well. That's why we said entrepreneurship in itself is your discovery of whatever idea that you have. In discovering an idea, you need to discover yourself. What makes me happy? In which enterprise or venture will I do and then derive pleasure at the end of the day, even besides monetary value as consideration? When you have this in place, then there will not be any fear in you, irrespective of how challenging the economy is. After all, serious and responsible, very focused entrepreneurs are still making it, despite our economic challenges. So take away fear. Love what you do, what you love to do. Derive joy and satisfaction in what you're doing. Then you will see the money come. In business, you have an idea. You love the idea. You start it yourself in your humble little way. When you start small, you have the capacity to grow. The second stage will be to get who we call business angels, those who believe in what you're doing. They could be your partners. They could be your investors. That is the second stage. The third stage, government will look at what you're doing and say, oh, he's doing it right. Let's give more support. However, in entrepreneurship, startups are encouraged. Youths of Nigeria with good ideas can come up with business plans that are marketable, business plans that will be profitable at the end of the day, business plans that are devoid of any inimiquity in the area of business. Government do support also. That's why agencies are available. I mentioned SMEDAN, NDE, BOI, quite a number of them doing wonderful jobs, but they need to do more.
They need to do more.
Right from primary school, it is imperative that trade, micro trade, ideas of trade is imbibed in our little pupils before they get to the secondary school and then to the tertiary institution. This needs to be sustained when you begin to catch them young.
What qualities do I need to possess to make me an entrepreneur? That would make me an entrepreneur.
You need to make yourself an entrepreneur. Even if you are a civil servant, the immediate past federal government had a presidential order, probably order 5 or so, I can't tell now, that permits even public and civil servants to establish business in the agricultural sector and its value chain. That is entrepreneurship. A friend of mine said recently that, yes, I'm a prosecutor. In my house, I have flowers adorning the walls of my house, so he said. And with those flowers, he removed them, got empty sacks of cement that they call buhu, and then he had soil in it with stubs of yam round his fence. Within a few months, we had, yam flour grow up, adorning the fence, making it beautiful, and with his family, they now have hundreds of yam in those sacks. They don't need to go to the market to buy yam anymore. It's part of entrepreneurship. They can also sell if they wish to. So you want to derive pleasure in what you do. Once you know that it is imperative to have multiple streams of income, then you work within the ambits of the law if you're a civil or public servant. But if you're not, a private person, entrepreneurship is the key. And entrepreneurship can be hereditary in itself. My parents were public servants. My grandfather was a public servant and a baggaji, but my grandmother was an entrepreneur. She was a firewood seller and a coal seller in bags. Along the line, we the children and even grandchildren took after her and we became entrepreneurs. My first 3 children, graduates, today are entrepreneurs in their respective states they are. When they graduated, they said, no, I'm not seeking for white-collar jobs. And they are doing very well as we speak.
That's interesting. Now, you talked about sometimes it is generational, like you have just discussed. We pass it down from the parents, the grandparents to their own children, and then the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren. Some families, it's like that. If you take a look at China, some businesses in China, in India, it is still entrepreneurship. Do we have a thriving or enabling environment here in Nigeria for these entrepreneurs to thrive?
But I said before,
some would like to do it because sometimes when you take a look at the money, technology, evolving technology, everything put together, people lose interest. Do we have an enabling environment for that?
If all things that needed to be done are done, government on its side, able to provide an enabling environment, which is primarily the power sector in the first instance. Before funding on the part of the entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur, have an integrous character. Be a man, woman, youth of integrity as you manage your business, passionately and positively. When you do things aright, it speaks to the nation that you are a true patriot in the country. When this is seen and you manage your little business gradually, then you can apply for funding. Nobody will doubt a unique business plan.
Most plans must be bankable.
Yes, bankable. That's why we call it unique, profitable, because it has to be seen to be profitable, while you put them together. We do a lot of that.
Interesting. So now, would you like to give tips to a prospective entrepreneur out there?
Yes. Entrepreneurship gives freedom. Entrepreneurship gives satisfaction. Entrepreneurship makes you wealthy with time. Rome wasn't built in a day.
At all.
Slow, keep it steady. You shall get there one day. At the end of the day, you shall be happier than when you started, when you become an entrepreneur. So I encourage Nigerian youth, over 70%. I even encourage the middle class and the elderly. It's never too late to start. You start off when you do start, and with time, prosperity in entrepreneurship shall be yours. So you're encouraged to embrace happiness, embrace prosperity, embrace hope. Even as we're talking about renewed hope in Nigeria, entrepreneurship is the key that will give us that freedom, either financially or otherwise, to become a person, the person that you love to be as a Nigerian patriot.
As a Nigerian patriot. The issue of funding, finance, capital, and there's what is called discipline when it comes to money issues. Please, I need you to speak to that, because sometimes when they get these grants, loans, or a particular fund to run this business, they suddenly grow big ideas at the expense of these businesses. Let's talk discipline when it comes to money.
Procrastination is the killer of destiny. Once you're given money to establish business, to run your enterprise, it is imperative that you keep it at that. If you go out of your way to expend the money on other frivolous things, fantasies of life, you, the person, starts to lose all. Remember, the money advanced to you is not for free. You will gradually and surely return the money when you run your enterprise productively, positively, with integrity in place. So we're encouraging our people. It is good to apply for funds. It is good for the funding to be advanced to you. And when it does, please manage those funds with absolute integrity without allowing anything that is untowards take over you.
Would large borrowings be advisable for a small business?
Not at all.
Why?
That will be encouraging illegality.
Why?
Because an enterprise, a small business in itself, starts small and requires minimal capital. That is the essence of the financial statement in your business plan. We'll look at what you actually need to purchase, how much you need to run the business in itself, how much will be your overhead for the first 6 months. For a small business that requires, say, 5 million naira, why advance 50 to such? That will be impossible. That will be unnecessary. That is impunity in business, and that is illegality at the end of the day.
So the business first and the idea first.
Definitely. It is imperative that integrity be the watchword of the average entrepreneur. Right there in your business plan, when we're putting it together, you are putting it together, having been taught to. It is stated how much you require to run your business. You need raw materials, you need items, you need running costs, you need overhead costs for at least 6 months. A small business that requires 5 million naira ought not to be advanced 50. That would be wrong. That would be misleading. That would be termed as business corruption, and that is illegality. Such a business will eventually fall because the frivolities of life will come in to such a young entrepreneur, and with time, regret would likely be the lot of such a person.
Dr. George Korede Martins, I want to thank you so much for joining us on Insight today. Thank you so much for your thought-provoking words on our focus. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much.
I'm fascinated with the discourse on national monuments and assets and how much is being done to preserve and
Look into the language issue. We have turned English to become like a pride value in our own cultural values.
It's not cash transfer. It's not a COVID-19.
Invasion 1897 was a deliberate
You know, many of these people coming to the urban areas now.
These and applications, there are terms and conditions that
of course it is the union of two people, a man and a woman coming together.
My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori.
What are we doing as a nation to first of all settle our teeming populace, especially the
NTA's political package with a third eye on the nation's political scene. I am Fisa Ogunfuyi. Welcome.
You have to be very careful giving space to people who are obviously sponsored to further the agenda of some other groups.
There's a lot of questions. A lot of questions in a closed door sessions. Some of these issues, some of the problems bedeviling their
In fact, between June 1st and July 17, 19-point-something billion has left the coffers of the NDDC.
I can say my constituency, they need everything because we don't have anything.
And that's Insight today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Elizabeth Omori. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.